Hello, and thanks for joining us again. I'd like to talk to you about protective framing for canvases, specifically the use of a rigid backing behind the canvas. Conservators and other professionals in the art world recognize the benefits of a solid backing when framing a canvas, but there is still a long-held belief among customers, artists, and even some framers that the back of a canvas should be left open. This video will give you some information that will help you provide better protection to your customers' artwork and also help explain best practices if it's questioned. First, let's take a look at common causes of damage to a canvas. Punctures and tears are a very common type of damage, and many conservators have put their kids through college repairing them. A canvas can be torn or punctured through careless handling, while in storage, or through simple common accidents around the house. Dents can occur when something hits the canvas but does not go all the way through. The back of a stretched canvas offers a lot of attractive hiding spots, dark and protected against the wall, where insects can set up home. They leave behind debris and droppings, and some insects may make a meal of the canvas. The mere thought of insects living in your frame painting should be enough that a backing makes sense. The same spaces behind a canvas that insects find attractive also collect dust. Not only is it unattractive, but dust on a canvas holds moisture, which can easily lead to the growth of mold and mildew. Dust and dirt can also be abrasive, and over time will slowly abrade and weaken the canvas. Something that is easy to miss is damage caused by vibrations. Normal air movement as AC cycles on and off and as doors are open and closed cause the canvas to flex slightly. Years of this flexing can accelerate cracking of the various layers of the painting, including the ground and the varnish. A backing behind the canvas isolates it from these air currents and greatly reduces the flexing it will encounter. Similar to air currents, swings in temperature and humidity will cause expansion and contraction of the canvas. This flexing can also cause damage to the layers of the painting. Museums take great pains to minimize fluctuations in the environment, but a home or office is not likely to have the same carefully controlled conditions. A backing behind the canvas provides a buffer, slowing changes so that they are not as drastic and take place over a longer period of time. Clearly, there are many ways a canvas can be damaged, and fortunately these can be easily avoided with a solid backing. Now let's go ahead and get this out of the way. You'll probably hear that a canvas must have an open back so that it can breathe. This is rubbish. A canvas does not need to breathe because it does not have lungs. That's obvious. What is probably meant is the idea that it should have airflow across the back, but we just looked at all the ways an unprotected canvas can be damaged. There is no evidence that a canvas benefits from an open back, and much to the contrary. There is one aspect to this which we will cover at the end when we discuss display conditions. But let's be clear, a canvas does not need an open back to breathe. Now, let's take a look at what materials you might use for a backing. Mat board is one option you have. It's certainly easily available, and you definitely have all the tools you need to work with it. Being fairly dense, it offers decent protection without a lot of added thickness. But it will absorb and hold moisture, which means you may have a problem with it warping or growing mold and mildew. It can be a decent option for a quick and dirty job in which preservation is not an important factor, like an imported mass-produced canvas. Foam board is also readily available and easy to work with. It's lightweight and gives decent protection. Like mat board though, the facing paper can absorb moisture. It's a decent option for an everyday job. The next option is fluted polypropylene board, thankfully known as Coroplast. It is a corrugated plastic board used a lot in the sign industry, and it's an excellent backing. It's lightweight and very easy to cut. Being plastic, it will not absorb moisture or warp, and it creates a very good barrier against moisture. It's lightweight, puncture resistant, and available oversized. The item numbers and sizes listed here are from Larson Jewell. There are two possible concerns with Coroplast. First, the open flutes create spaces in which insects could make a home. Conservators in a museum would seal up the edges with something like frame sealing tape to prevent this, but for us, a dust cover would handle it. As a side note, museums often do not use dust covers since they want to get into a frame as easily as possible. Second, in a fire, the flutes can act like chimneys and help propagate flames. This can also be prevented by sealing the ends. Granted, if you're dealing with a fire, there are probably bigger problems to worry about, but that's what conservators are paid to do. It's not something any of us are likely to have to worry about, but just know there is a workaround. Next, we have acrylic. Realistically, it's not something we're likely to do very often, but it's an option to file away. You would do this when there is something on the back of the canvas that your customer would like to be able to see. Museums will sometimes do this so that the back of a canvas can be examined periodically without the need to remove it from its frame. It's one of the most puncture resistant of all the options listed, and it's available in large sizes. It also adds weight and expense, so account for that in your pricing and design. To finish it off nicely, run frame sealing tape around the edges, which will also seal off the frame from dust and insects. This option is also one that you wouldn't use very often, but should at least be aware of. Dibond is a brand name of a board used in graphics and sign making, made of 2 layers of thin aluminum sandwiching a layer of polyethylene plastic. It's very rigid, thin, and quite strong, providing excellent protection. It's also heavy and higher in cost. It's very useful if you're using an old frame that's not very sturdy or a narrow frame that needs reinforcement. You can cut it or have it cut slightly smaller than the outside dimension of the frame and screw it onto the frame. This will unite the frame, adding strength. Like acrylic, it will also add cost and weight, so be sure to take this into account. Of all these options, Coroplast is the winner for most everyday applications. It has the right balance of weight, cost, protection, and ease of use. Now let's see how we can use these backings. If you were just stretching a canvas without a frame, maybe as a gallery wrap, you can screw the Coroplast to the back of the stretcher bars. When a conservator finishes work on a canvas, they will usually do this so that the painting is protected whether it is in a frame or not. For the most secure attachment, use fender or cup washers. If it's a quick and dirty job or something for temporary use, stapling matboard to the back is adequate. Fender washers and cup washers are an item you can find at the local hardware store or on Amazon. If the canvas is going into a frame with a little extra depth, your usual framer's points are just fine. Another option is to use offset clips installed backwards. This is a good choice for a large, heavy canvas. If the canvas and backing sit flush to the back of the frame, use mending plates or turn buttons. Scale the hardware to the size of the work. Larger hardware for large canvases and small hardware for small canvases. If the frame is shallow and the contents sit proud of the back, use offset clips. With a floater frame, the backing will sit between the frame and the stretched canvas, held in place by the same screws that hold the canvas in place. Just to make it easier to work with in the fitting process, you could tack the backing into place with a few staples into the stretcher bars. Once everything is in place, install a dust cover. Because the backing will keep out insects and dust, this is mainly to make the back look neat and clean. As I mentioned before, museums normally do not use dust covers because the environment is very carefully controlled, and they want to be able to get into the frame as easily as possible. By the way, some framers use only a dust cover when framing canvases. While it does provide for a clean appearance, it offers very little protection from dents and punctures. Ideally, the dust cover should resist moisture and tearing, and for this reason Tyvek is an ideal choice. So how about ventilation holes? I'm telling you about this mainly so that you know not to do it and why. Due mainly to a poorly researched article in the 60s, some framers decided that a reasonable compromise of protection and the need for a canvas to, quote, breathe, they would cut ventilation holes in the backing. The only thing this did was create a perfect place for insects to live. Dark and protected with easy access. Plus, conservators found patches of dirt and dust on the canvas exactly corresponding to the holes. Then framers decided to cut ventilation holes, but put fabric or screen on the holes to keep out dust and insects. Don't bother. Again, there is no evidence that a canvas benefits from ventilation. The only thing this will accomplish is waste your time and effort. Just don't do it. Finally, let's talk a little bit about where the frame painting will be displayed. This is beyond your control, but it's worth having a conversation with your customer. And it also addresses the idea of a canvas needing airflow. First, avoid areas of high humidity. This isn't just a matter of air conditioning, but also location. Chimneys and masonry walls will absorb and hold moisture, and outside walls can also allow humidity and moisture to pass through. Under these conditions, moisture can become trapped between the wall and the artwork and allow mold and mildew to grow. To a lesser extent, this can happen anywhere. This is probably the tiny kernel of truth that the whole idea of an open canvas grew from. This is why bumpers holding the frame at least 1/8 of an inch away from the wall or more are so important. They allow fresh air to flow between the frame and the wall, preventing humidity from building up. Now you have the information you need to inform yourself, your customers, and artists about the benefits of backing on a canvas. You'll notice that the title mentions a Part 1. In Part 2, we'll look at the benefits of glazing on a canvas and how to work that into the frame. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to be informed when new videos are up.